Greetings and welcome to another fantastic episode of the Limitless Mind podcast. I am your host, Travis Magus, and today we have a very special guest with us. And this special guest I've known for quite some time, and I've known to be very, very enthusiastic, very brilliant, and very innovative with some of the understandings of the different techniques that we've gone over in the past few years. And I'd like to introduce this guest with the utmost respect. And today we have with us Alora.
Well, hi. Thank you for having me. I feel very honored by that introduction. Thank you.
Oh yeah, the people have to know who we're dealing with today.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you for going on this creative road with me and giving me all the resources that we can study and huge, huge in my development.
Awesome, awesome. So if you wouldn't mind, that was my introduction from my perspective. Um, just give us a little bit about who you are, how you got started in this spiritual journey, and finally what your focus is currently.
Sure. So I've always been interested in magic. My mom raised us with the belief in nature spirits, and even went so far to say that like we were part fairy and stuff. So as a kid, you could tell that the bullying what like started pretty much instantly. As soon as I started telling people like, "Oh yeah, we're part fairy," but that always played a part in my life, and um, there were just all these influences around me growing up. Like my mom worked at a bookstore, and in that bookstore was a whole bunch of books about like mystical beings, esoteric teachings, right? But I didn't really know that was it. And interestingly enough, too, there was a lot of Vedic stuff that was in there, and Hindu and like Hindu mythology and all of that. So I grew up very much indoctrinated into mythology and folklore and the idea of magic playing an integral part of kind of everything in our lives. Um, and when I was 8, I had my first major taste of death when my father passed away. So from that, all of a sudden, the things I had been reading about or the stories came alive because now it's like that veil became a lot thinner in my interactions with the other world. And just kind of seeing what, having to question what life was, having to question what life was, and just kind of like what what it mean like what death means, and do we really pass on, like all these kinds of questions came up. So it's like, and then these interactions with like ghosts or spirits and all of that sort of just started to play even more into my life. And um, as my mom went on her journey, which led to a bunch of destructive patterns, right? Because when someone like your husband dies in such a violent way, it's like you don't recover instantly. You can't really be a parent. It's very hard. So while she was doing that, I basically was raising myself. And what I had was the folklore around me. What I had was the experiences, the weird dreams, all of this, all these little things that I couldn't really explain to other people, but I had to find some explanation for. So that's kind of what that is definitely was my background in magic and starting that journey. There really wasn't any other channel for me to go down. I remember in particular, when I would walk to school, I used to make up stories in my head, right? About like being this character and what she'd be doing and all this kind of stuff. And I remember that was uh, the first time I heard another voice enter into my head, giving me guidance. So it was like, okay, I can, you know, what is this? And so from that, it just kind of became this ongoing um, study of what's actually out there, what's really happening. And yeah, so from that, I could just kind of continued to branch out and learn what I could, and here we are. And so right now, I would say I definitely, if I were to put a term or some kind of label to myself, I would probably say that I'm more of a chaos magician in the sense that I take all of the sources and resources that I have and I create my own rituals and my own disciplines from that. So I use multiple sources. It's never just one. I like to figure out the framework of how something works and then apply it. And so as of recently, that really led me down the path of, um, I would say, like psychology, like using psychology as a base for a lot of my magic, for a lot of my practices. I find that very grounding and practical, and yet at the same time, I can use it as the experience is occurring. You know, when you're in the midst of an experience, it's not like, okay, let me get my candles out. Let's do this whole ritual here. It doesn't always work like that. And once you figure out the framework of setting intention, of being able to reprogram the subconscious mind, or of how patterns relate to each other, you don't have to do all of that. You can just start to visualize. And if you know what to visualize, it helps you in the moment to just dial it down and think practically and ground yourself. So I've been recently, that's kind of been my major experience, has been that. And then, ongoing with dream working, I find dream working really, really fascinating. And it's something that I am naturally attuned to. So that's something that I'm also always working on in order to help me in the conscious waking life. And just to see those correlations there and then build further patterns off of that and further practices and stuff like that helps me in my everyday experience. So that's kind of where I've been at recently. Yeah,
Okay, okay. And thank you for sharing that. What I'm hearing is that through a lot of these early experiences, you've had a lot of material to pull from in order to come to a solid interpretation of what you're doing now. In other words, it's like having a bunch of research in order to make uh, a comprehensive theory about a certain thing.
for sure, for sure. And I I give gratitude for your channel in particular for helping to expand on that, because it's like you can have all the books in the world, you can read everything, but if you don't have people to discuss it with, you're kind of left to your own devices to try and interpret what's actually being said. So your content has allowed me to unlock a lot of um, doors when it came to that information I was given, so I can understand it better and see how it's related to my life and how I can continue to use it as the tool that it's meant to be used for instead of just kind of guessing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So speaking of which, how would you say that your journey has changed, right, from the early days of having your own world that you're building in your mind, and having that to integrate with how you deal with the outside world? How would you say that your methods and your understanding has changed from the early days to where you find yourself now?
It's interesting because I'm noticing that the only thing that's really changed is my awareness of the story that I've built so far. So there's kind of a continued awareness that's occurring. So it's like I'll be playing out a scene in my head and it'll make me react emotionally to an experience or to a situation because I had this picture in my head. And in my perspective, that needed to play out. And if that doesn't play out, that causes emotional dysregulation. So it's now, before, if that happened, it kind of became a catastrophic moment because all of a sudden I could no longer follow the story that I had been creating. Whereas now it's I'm able to become aware of, whoa, okay, hold on. So this is a story I was creating. This is what was important to me. But why is it so important that I need it to play out like this? What other information am I missing here? Um, and what state am I putting myself in? So it's allowing me to take apart what I've been telling myself and instead be able to come at it from a more third person point of view so I can create a more well rounded picture, a whole rounded picture of what's actually going on. Which is really difficult to do when something's playing out when you got an idea in your head about this is how this is supposed to be, but something else happens. Or you have to deal with a stressor or something like that. And um, you realize in that moment that you're unprepared for it. So, from where I am now, it has definitely branched my awareness of the story that I already created, um, and has allowed me to I can now kind of make tweaks to that. Doesn't mean that I won't have an emotional reaction. It doesn't mean that that the I won't get caught in my own traps because that's my map, right? It's full of them. But it at least I now have the ability to look at it and be able to say, okay, next time that I see this buildup, I'm going to bring this back down because I want this kind of result. And I see how this was playing out, but I missed this total other angle of the story because I was just focused on this one point here. Um, so that's been so that's definitely changed a lot of my viewpoint when it comes to like the story that I had in my mind. But it's really cool at the same time to see what has actually played out to my benefit. So like one of the things that I didn't realize that I built up so much as a child, but always was that I wanted to be the hero of the story. I wanted to help people. I wanted to be a healer and a fighter and all this. And I had like this build up in my head because it was like my safe little fantasy there. Like, what if I can do all of these things? I'm not going to let someone tell me that it's not real because I've already had these experiences that proves to me that this stuff is real. When you're telling me fairies are fake, I've had experiences with fairies that makes me believe they're real, right? So it's like, okay, this if I can really create my life, what do I want? And as a child, I would play out these fantasies. And as an adult now, it's really cool to see how I've set my life up to be that fantastical character that I always wanted to be. Now it's but now I'm put in the driver's seat of it. Now it's like that realization of it and then understanding the value. So, what comes with being a healer? What actually comes with being a fighter? What comes with having all of these connections to faraway places and making friends and then being able to sustain those friendships? What is that place on me as a person? And that allows me to adjust the story so then I can still have these experiences, but it also is like adding those extra layers, right? So it allows me to also be able to see, like, okay, yeah, I can let this idea go of what it means. I don't have to be there for everyone. That's actually not the point of being a healer, right? Like, so there are these levels now that I'm fully aware of and that I can now change. So I would say a multitude of things have changed when it comes to looking at my own map from the perspective I'm at now, especially having these tools. Another thing was with the magic stuff, right? Like, I actually think I kind of got disconnected from it for a bit because, it felt silly to some extent using my imagination, using visualization to get what I
Mm.
want. Um, and but I would have these, but I remember like being in these states when I was a kid where I would like practice waving my hand in front of some leaves and the leaves would move and then I would stop and the leaves would halt. And, and it's like I wanted to connect to that childlike fantasy again as an adult. And then to realize that there are these Zen masters who really do that. And there is an ability that we have. There is actually a life force that you can feel. That's what Reiki is, right? Like there's all of these, like this is very, very real. So how can I tap into that? Oh, it's through the use of it's through the unlocking of my imagination. Ah, okay. So I can be practical, but there's also this side to me that I can give into, which has been really rewarding.
Okay, so you talked about being able to acknowledge the practicality in tandem with your imagination. So practicality, imagination, combining the two sides of the coin. Can you tell us just a little bit about what you said earlier? You said that there's somewhat of a desire to be the main character, to be the healer, to be the fighter, right? And I've experienced your healing help, right, in some of the things that we've done. And people may not know, but Alora is internationally known out here in these streets. Would you mind sharing us just a little bit about what you engage in on this fighter aspect? How do you express that, if you care
How
to
do I
share?
ex- Sure. So how do I express the fighter aspect? So like the fighter, like the fantasy kind of part, or like how it's played out in my life?
The practical part, and what I really want to ask is how, in what you do as far as your skill training, how have you found that connected to your imagination, your spiritual work, etc.? What you do in the
Oh,
mundane world? Yeah, go ahead.
oh shoot, man, it's all connected. Like that is sports. That is the life of a fighter. I mean, holy cow, when they say, so on Muay Thai, there's Muay Thai comes from Thailand, right? And that's the martial arts that I've been training.
Okay.
And it's Thailand is their national religion is Buddhism. And so when you speak of Muay Thai, there is a Buddhistic aspect to it that is revered and honored because as a practitioner, you're not going in it to um, fully destroy somebody, but it's for some people it is, right? Especially North Americans are pretty darn aggressive. But for the most part, you go into it with the mindset of this person is now an obstacle. I am going to practice moving through this obstacle no matter what hardships I go through and not show that I'm going through the hardship. So essentially neutralizing the problem, not denying that the problem is there, but neutralizing it. So at the heart of every fighter, those who succeed, that's where the martial artist comes in. And when it comes to practicing the techniques or being able to move past that emotional aspect of it, or at least to be able to regulate the emotions as you're getting punched in the face, right? All kinds of stuff. You use, that's real. You use visualization. Like in everything that you do, the reason why coach is showing you how like a kick is because he wants you or she wants you to visualize you performing that kick. That's
Okay.
the only way you're going to get it. In fact, I got into an awesome conversation with my partner about this. My partner, he's an instructor, and we were talking about having to simplify it for everyone, right? Like a jab is for us no longer just a jab. A cross is no longer just a cross. We're aware of the pressure differences. We're aware of if I turn my fist a certain way, it's going to have this effect. I don't always have to use my cross to hit the face. I can use it for the body or whatever. But all of that comes when you just start by throwing a jab and a cross because your mind is automatically going to make up a story as to how you want to use this. But you have to first open up that door. So it's exactly the same thing when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to our magical structure. I started off very much into Wiccanism because that's all I knew magic was, right? Like I thought,
Mm.
okay, if you want to get into earth spirits or whatever, I gotta be Wiccan. And but so like I would do these rituals to the mother goddess and to all this kind of stuff, and I never understood the deeper levels of it. But the more I became educated, especially when we started learning the Vedic stuff, right? Like because that's the foundation for all of Western occultism. When I started learning that, I should say, relearning all that, it became so much more clearer as to why someone would use these rituals. Oh, it's so then I can spark that story in my mind. So I can start imagining myself performing or having whatever it was my intention was at the beginning. Once I do that, my subconscious is able to accept the suggestions I'm giving it as real. And then my awareness will expand. My sphere of availability, or what I see around me, changes. It changes in its function. No longer, if I want a car, right, of a certain color, no longer am I just looking at cars in the street. All of a sudden, I start noticing red cars or whatever car of that color I
Mm-hmm.
wanted. But that came with the understanding of how the suggestion hits into that subconscious and how that starts to process in the mind and the reality starts to mold after that. So I like same thing with martial arts, man. Like it's just it goes hand in hand. And actually I would say that martial arts has assisted me in that in understanding how everything starts as a thought form and moves into the physical. Like martial arts is that demonstration for me. So you have to have that imagination when it comes to applying it to the practical means of things. Like you must. You can't just be going in there winging it, just throwing punches
Right,
and
right.
kicks wherever, right? Because someone is going to have a defense for that. Your obstacle is going to say, no, thank you, right? They're gonna they're gonna do there's gonna be a response that's not gonna be what you wanted. So yeah, that's how I would definitely say martial arts just really changes the game when it comes to understanding imagination and practicality and uniting those two. Because you actually have to make focused, concentrated effort, especially in visualization, in order to attain the results that you desire. Like one of the like before my fight, I would listen to podcasts. Well, I've had two fights so far, and I was listening to these podcasts, kind of building up to it because it was like, man, I knew what I wanted from it. Of course, I wanted to win, but I didn't really. But I also was aware that visualizing just winning something without visualizing all of the other stuff that comes with it would really not prepare me for the experience. So I was
Mm.
listening to podcasts of fighters, of people actually doing the thing. And it's it was amazing to hear how like so many professionals will just visualize every circumstance before they actually ever enter the ring. Be like, if I throw this kick and it gets blocked, what is my next move? Okay, this could be it. Or how can I throw it in a way that might surprise this other person? What if it doesn't work and they follow through with this? Okay, so it's a continual chess game, and that they're playing in their heads, but they're also building a story, and
Yeah.
they're kind of leaving that story open before they enter into the ring. So by the time they enter into the ring, they've already prepared because they already have a million different endings to this story. Now it's just a matter of how am I going to respond to that? But all of that started up in the head. All that started in imagination.
Awesome. Awesome. So here is what I would like to ask concerning that very last point. Um, one of the things that I've been talking about and teaching very recently is that it's extremely important for us to develop our psychic capacity. If you find yourself doing magic in any way, shape, or form, if you're not developing your psychic ability, you're not actually making progress and moving forward, right? You're not just going to read a book and then dryly perform the ritual from out the book. You're also not going to just try some stuff you found on TikTok and then hope that it's going to work every time. In doing these rituals and in attempting these different things, there must be a cultivation of the psychic aspect. So, based on what you have described so far, especially with the visualization of all the different outcomes before the match actually starts, could you say that that is an aspect of developing a psychic ability? Or would you say that, well, what would you say?
Yeah, 100%. Um, so when developing psychic ability, one of the things that I found most important was connecting to my own energy and the state that I was in, the emotional state that I was in when tapping into that.
Okay.
Um, because when it came to visualizing what it was that I wanted, I found that I stayed confused or was unable to achieve the results I wanted when I didn't have a clear focus going into it because I didn't actually know what I wanted. So when it comes to attaining psychic ability, you can practice meditating on your third eye. You can practice all that kind of stuff, but you're not going to know what you're doing until you have a clearer intent, until you start figuring out, okay, I want to know I want to know what I'm actually bringing to the table here. What is my
Mm-hmm.
connection to myself? Um, as we've discussed in your courses before, right? It's like a memory. We, depending on the state that we're in, that is what creates the memory that we have of something. So I can learn something out of a book, but if my state at that time is just, okay, this is going to have to work every time because I like this author, well, it might work for a bit, but I'm not going to understand. But it may not, oh, when it's not consistent, I'm going to reach a type of a confusion with it because my state when remembering that was that it has to be in this certain way. And if it's
Mm-hmm.
not in this certain way, then that means I cannot reach this place where I want to be if I use a certain way, if I use another way of doing this, or if I try to pick it up. Um, so I would say, yeah, it's pretty much the same thing when you're visualizing your opponent because it's like you don't necessarily want to visualize losing. I mean, if it happens, it happens, right? That's a possibility, of
Yeah.
course. But it's more like what is my reaction? What is the energy that I'm bringing to the table? What do I specialize in? What would I like to emphasize on? What would I like to learn from this? Putting myself in another state that allows me to be open to all these other scenarios playing out in my head allows me to then create a memory and a visualization that then gives me more of that psychic intuitiveness when I go into a fight, when I go into a sparring match, when I go into my training. It's the same with my rituals. Like keeping a mind of that's where they say like when you're trying to learn something new, right? Make it fun, make it like a
Mm-hmm.
game because you're more likely to remember it like that. So then when things get hard, you don't see it as like, well, it has to be this way. You see it as like, okay, cool. Like this is a new part of the game, I guess.
Yeah.
so it's that and so that kind of builds the acuity of it and it allows you to become aware of what actually you want to focus on. You know, like during my first fight, I lost that first fight because the way how I was throwing my knees was sparring knees. So that means that I was throwing knees um, into like to the side of the person instead of directly into the gut. You know, like into the rib, right? It wasn't direct enough. right? I was misusing my energy. I had the right idea, but I wasn't really moving the body the way that that counted. So instead of getting all bummed out for my second fight, totally adjusted it. I made the necessary adjustments and I won, right? But it was because that allowed me to see, okay, I need to be more focused in how I'm throwing my knees instead of throwing them to the side. Like, all right, cool, I threw knees, but now instead of to the side, I'm going to be more direct with it. So it's kind of like that. I definitely see that relationship where it's the same thing when it comes to building your psychic acuity. It's like you can light a candle and you can make an intention and you can say it's going to work like this, but according to the state that you're in when it doesn't work, are you going to adjust what's necessary? Are you going to know what to adjust? Or are you not even going to be open to it? And that shuts down all of your psychic intuition. I mean, that's the killer of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And
absolutely.
yeah, I just kind of want to add to that too, that that's where we get into assumptions. Because when building psychic intuition, I think a lot of people move into assumptions because they're not looking at the energy that they're bringing to it. So
Oh
when
yeah.
something, yeah, right. So they'll be like, oh man, I had a boss who was like this. We were sitting outside at a bake sale one day and she was like, and as the people were passing, she was showing off how she could understand their body language really well. And you could
Mm-hmm.
tell at one point she just got so carried away that in with what she was actually doing. Um, so sorry about that. She, but so like there was a point where like she got so carried away with trying to say like all this kind of stuff and feeling like she was the hot shot that this guy walked past and she was like, he abuses women. I can tell. I'm just like, you cannot tell. Like, you don't know that. Maybe he was just having a bad day. And you're saying from the way how he was walking because he didn't say hello to it. Like, there were so many other signs that said that, like, there are very many other possibilities of this. But she wanted to
Right.
get real specific at that moment. And she lost her psychic accuracy.
Yeah, man. Those type of readers can get very obnoxious. I've known some people like that. Um, and what I find is that those are the type of people who don't have a habit of studying and they don't have a habit of practicing to improve. So it's like maybe she was accurate a few times and then was like, okay, I'm gonna stop here because I'm an expert. And what you'll find is exactly that. You might see like one or two hits right on the money, but you'll also definitely see projection happening, right? With the few psychic people that I know in real life, that's their limit. That's their cap. They don't study. They don't practice past what they know, and whenever they talk to me about stuff, it's always projection. Just like which is he's an abuser. You don't have enough evidence for that, and you damn well ain't psychic enough to just pick that up. I promise you're not.
Yep, that's oh man. And that's going back to what we were talking about before where you have to learn how to observe your map. What picture have you created?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like do you have that awareness to see what you're actually bringing to the table? Like the other night I had a emotional moment and I thought I was making, like I thought this picture was exactly how it was. I thought this is exactly how shit was playing out. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
man, this sucks. Like I'm going to voice my concerns. But I already knew that because I've done my work, that when I'm having an emotional reaction like this, there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to miss.
Mm.
So the best way to express myself so that tension doesn't, so we can clear the air is I feel that this is what's happening and this is my truth, right? Like, but I'm open to yours. Tell me what's happening. Like, what did I miss? And because of that, we were able to resolve the situation in a way that was very practical. And I noticed that I had missed and misinterpreted and had assumed a lot of things that weren't actually occurring. But the picture in my head played out in this certain way, which today during reflection led me back to the same traumatic event that happened, right? So I'll give an example. I had what this related to, right? I, the day that my father passed away, I used to go with him to his work all the time. Like every day I would go with him to his work. Then that day, I decided for the first time to go to my mother's school with her because I wanted to see what that was like. And he was like, good for you. Like, yeah, check something new out. Go ahead and do that. I'll see you later. And then I never saw him again. So in my head, if something doesn't go how I have planned it, that means that everything is going to fall apart. That was the actual picture that I created. So I thought I had done all this work, but here I am creating this catastrophic picture of something because of that one event instead of actually seeing what was in front of me. And when I allowed my emotions to get involved, it's like, man, all hell breaks loose. So I lose my ability to be able to connect to what's actually happening. And I'm unable to create another picture. I'm unable to see of anything else occurring. And I think that a lot of people who claim that they're psychic have also had, I think everyone has this because we're all getting our references from our childhood. So I think that a lot of people who are going into that psychic attunement, it's like, you got to let it go, right? You have to unlock the imagination, but when is it too far? When am I now just projecting this fantasy that I had created from this past experience from when I was a kid, when I was a kid. So, so
A little
it's
chid.
a little kid, I know, child and kid all in one. Yeah, I think there's a lot of projection, especially in the magic community, because for a lot of us, I think that we got into it because we already felt alone and we already had to learn how to deal with our problems. And we were having
Mm-hmm.
experiences that a lot of people didn't want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not afraid to go into that and to explore it. Like, what is this darkness that I'm seeing? What is these ghosts? What is this energy? What is this something else that I'm experiencing? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a beautiful thing. Um, but when you then don't ground yourself into understanding where you're coming from and that your environment has a profound effect on you, and that, where your reactions are coming from, where your projections are coming from, you can easily lose yourself in the identity of, oh, I'm a psychic, or I'm a magician, oh, spirit told me this, and be completely wrong.
And so obstinate that you won't even admit it. But that just talks about the importance of shadow work, right? Uh oh, I think you're muted. You are muted.
Yeah, there we are. Okay, my apologies. Yes, that is the importance of shadow work. Um, yeah, without it, I mean, and this is where even like this is where that psychic attunement. This is where working with Goetia. This is where, at least in my experience of working with Goetia, right? Some people will say, "Oh, it's too scary" or whatever, but my experience with Goetia has always been um shadow working. Like they are there to, these are some energies that you can tap into, because if you want success, then you have to know how you have been seeing success up to this point. Have you been allowing yourself to experience it, or have you been shutting yourself down for years? Goetia will show you that. So if you want money, what has your relationship with money been thus far? They put it in your face. So this is so from even just, and even like right down to their appearance, right? Like, okay, what religious programming have you been subjected to that you've taken in as truth that now you cannot see your shadow? without it being
Mm.
something really, really scary. So yeah, shadow working is just that internal work. It's huge, huge. Um, Especially, and this is where that psychology aspect comes into it. Like I have on my wall, right, the logical levels. We have at the top of the chain your spirituality, lower it, you have identity, beliefs, then capability and your confidence, your behavior, and your environment at the very bottom. So all of these levels here play a part in how you identify with reality. And if you're unable to look at all those levels or see how you relate to that in those levels, you'll never be able to find the root as of your projection.
Yeah, yeah, you just brought up a lot of good memories here. There was a diagram I meant to send you a few days ago. I guess I didn't send it to you. Um, about those logical levels. Um, quite a few of them. Hold on just a minute. My camera is being camera-y. There we go. Yeah. Um, but yeah, the main importance is like what we were talking about with the example of the woman projecting based on her unresolved inner work. I can tell those headphones are no longer there.
They, yep, they died.
Okay, okay.
That's okay though. That's okay.
Trying to find. Okay, here we go. So, is that it? No, that's not it. Because you mentioned the logical levels, and these have everything to do with the layers of our beliefs and how deep they really go, and how they affect us from our physical body, our environment, to who we identify ourselves as, and beyond. Well, anyway, I think I'll just send it to you on Instagram because I'm not finding the diagram. But in any case, since we're speaking on the NLP stuff, let's uh let's project a bit into the future. Yeah, look at this. This is like a 3D diagram of the levels.
Nice.
You can't really see the text, but
Yeah,
I'll send it to you.
thank you.
So let's do a little bit of future pacing, based on where you've come from as a child, and the beliefs and the tools that you've used to process reality, to where you are now, and how you actually utilize those same tools, but in a more mature way, in a more refined way, in a more precise way. What do you see for yourself in the future? What do you see for yourself 10 years from now? How do you think that your spiritual journey will be different?
Well, I definitely would like to create a more wise approach. I think 10 years from now, it'll definitely be a lot more refined. I've been really learning how to simplify my language and not over explain, because I confuse myself when I do that and everyone else around me. Um, I would really like to take the role of teacher within 10 years or be able to assist on that front in a way that is practical and at the same time kind of eliminates the fear that a lot of people have moving into esoteric and occultism. I think that
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of in this really cool wave where people are open to it, but it's still got this spooky idea of like, oh, they're all devil worshippers. And it's like, like, and I think within 10 years, most of that will probably be dispelled, but I would like to be part of that wave that also dispels that fear because there is something there. It's very, very real when you're speaking about energy. And that is what we study is what our vibration actually is, what patterns we actually are. And can we expand on that? Can I identify beyond just as Aurora who's living in, Arizona? Like that there's more to this. And when we can connect to those more subtle levels, we can become more authentic to who we actually are, right? And gain the life that we really do desire, which is a happy one that's full of peace. And if there is a part of us that is suffering, that we'll be able to heal it. So I would like, within 10 years, my projection is I would really like to be in a place where once an experience occurs, I can have a quicker and more wiser approach to how I want to achieve that end, to where I can gain that happiness. So that's kind of where I'm definitely visualizing my future within 10 years, is being able to um being able to approach all the suffering that life brings in a way that is wise, that is kind, and not just kind to others but to myself, and
Mm-hmm.
to be able to gain peace from it where I really don't have bad days anymore. That's definitely, and then be able to share that with others and to teach that to others so then they also don't have bad days anymore. So that is definitely where I want to see, where I am projecting myself in 10 years. And it's kind of hilarious to me thinking about that, because I also am working into that role of, eventually teaching martial arts. That's also one of my goals within 10 years. And I just think that would be so rad to be able to introduce that concept as well into the martial arts. Like, now we're going to actually play with violence instead of being subject to it.
Yeah. I could see you as this badass Muay Thai teacher, just knowing every single option and resolution for any situation. I can see that.
Oh, thank you. That's definitely the fantasy, and that's the goal.
You talked a little bit about Goetia. I know you've worked with quite a few spirits. Have you ever worked with Marcosius?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Marcosius and I are like buddies, man. Yeah. Marcosius, yes, I have.
I can
And I
tell.
still
I
do.
can tell. I can tell. You guys share a very similar, you ladies share a very similar vibe.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Marcosius, I would definitely say, is um for sure an energy that really works, that I work very, very well with. Um yeah, and that's the other fun part about learning the deeper parts of this, right? Because once you start kind of getting into states, emotions, the vibrational aspects of it, you start to see what Goetia are. You start to see what spirits are. And
Yes.
again, that fear is removed because you're like, oh, this has always been a part of me. Like, this has always been a vibrational resonance. That's it. So I just have to be able to tap into that. And how have I been tapping into that so far? It's the same. We do the same thing when we start picking apart our motivation for something. We're doing the same thing.
Hmm.
Working with spirits is no different. Working with Goetia is no different. It's just you're just taking it to a more subtle level, but you're still looking at the same thing. In fact, when you contact Goetia or spirits, do you not also have a motivation?
Right. Right. I wouldn't even suggest just doing it for no reason.
Right.
I found this diagram. I'll show it to you real quick because I know that you know what it is. Other people might not. Is it clear?
Yes.
No. It is?
I mean, I see little squares on it. I can't read the
Okay.
writing, but yeah.
How about
Mm-mm.
well basically they're the levels. And we got the spiritual on the top. Spiritual, that's your God. Identity, that's your soul. Beliefs and values, that's your heart. Capabilities, that's your mind. Behaviors, that's your strength. And then, of course, we got environment.
Hmm.
I just thought it was really cool that how they just kind of broke it down into different levels of the self: your strength, your mind, your heart, your soul, your God.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And actually, I'm sorry, what level was your heart at?
Oh man, I just lost the page. Oh, your heart was at beliefs and values.
Okay. So, speaking of heart, we're going to take it to a vibrational level here.
Let's go.
So, you have, I'm going to use my notes for this one. I know you're not supposed to, but here we go. So, we have proprioceptive monitors. They monitor six fields of processing, including the electromagnetic fields. So, sensation is a language, okay, on the more subtle levels. Um, the heart is the most powerful vibrational source for humans to detect. It has an electromagnetic field that radiates 3 to 8 feet in front of you. So if you're by someone for 3 to 8 feet, your vibrations from your heartbeat will automatically begin to sync. And a passage of vibrational emotional information is going to be received.
Can I
So
say
when
something
we're,
here?
oh, please do.
I noticed earlier in our conversation at some point our blinking synced up.
Yeah, right. Yes. So this is where we start taking apart. This is as occultists, as actual practitioners, these are the levels that we're working at. When we're speaking of behaviors, we're not just saying, I'm angry or I have a habit of this or that. We're looking at the actual resonance of it.
Yeah.
What language is being spoken right now? Kinesthetic is the first language that we actually speak.
Mm-hmm.
Like what is the language that is being spoken to, and then what emotion is being attached to it as I'm doing this.
Oh wow. Okay. Um, could you read that one more time? That was about
Yes,
the heart.
yes. So let's break down the heart again. So the heart is the most powerful vibrational source for humans to detect. It has an electromagnetic field that radiates 3 to 8 feet. So if you're 3 to 8 feet from someone, your vibrations from your heartbeats will automatically begin to sync, and a passage of vibrational emotional information will be received. So that means that, and if we break that down even more, right, that means that if I'm going into something with a certain behavior, you may start actually mirroring that behavior without even
Mm-hmm.
realizing it. We're now
Yes. Yes.
creating the
Yes.
same story. We're now projecting the same story. This is how we manipulate reality, right? This is how our vibrations play a part in our manifestations, in our actual manifestations.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And so, like, we're currently undergoing this cyclomancy course, and what I've learned about cyclomancy is that it is a manual of how to train your conscious mind to come into control of subconscious behaviors. And that includes the heart rate, that includes different things with your eyes, with your breathing, etc. One of the main takeaways that I've found is that you'll find in texts they talk about your heart and the way that your heart is. And it's not just physical, like your physical heart and how it beats. You have a certain mental wavelength that's attached to what we call the heart. And that's at the core of how you behave. That's behind everything that you do. We've heard phrases like, so and so, they ain't got no heart. They ain't got no heart. And you automatically know what that means. This is somebody that's somewhat of a coward. They're wishy washy. They just, you can't trust them to succeed and follow through with a certain task. And then we have somebody who may have a big heart. We know what that means, right? This is somebody who very much cares for a lot of people, sometimes too much. So when we talk about the heart, it isn't necessarily just the physical heart. It's something to do with the core of the belief of how they operate. in day to day life.
Yes.
And like what you just read, such a thing is contagious. Such a thing is it influences other people in the vicinity of the individual.
Right. So when we're looking, I mean, this is where face reading comes in, right? And this is again back to that psychic intuitive thing where a lot of people will start projecting. If
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at
Mm.
face reading, right, you'll see someone and you'll say, oh, they're giving off this. Like if you notice, right, look at old school Disney villains. They kind of got a similar look going on, right? Everyone can tell, like, they may be acting nice, but they have this face. They have this
Yeah.
they have this way, their jaw kind of protrudes a little bit too much, and their nose is a little bit crooked, and their eyes are kind of real pointy right in the beginnings. This person kind of looks like a manipulator. It looks like this. And you can actually gain a lot of psychic intuition from that. And in Chinese face reading, they look at that stuff all the time, and they'll say, this person might have these types of qualities to them, and we relate them to
Yes.
elements, right? We relate them to categories, so they're not specific, this, and this, but they're within a range,
Right.
right?
Absolutely
And
right.
this is yeah, and so to be psychic, right? To You are tapping into that range on that more subtle level. You're trying to identify what aspect of energy this person is projecting. So what stories might go along with that, right? You're checking that out. So that's where like you'll hear people and they'll be like, "Oh, do you I'm getting red as a color for you. Why am I getting red?" And if the person wants to identify with that other person as being legit, we're talking about the heart rate syncing up again, right? Their story is going to start to relate and they'll be like, "Oh shoot, I was wearing a red shirt last week and this dude stole my ice cream." And then the psychic will be like, "Oh my god, I saw ice cream." Right?
Yeah.
And then a story is being made, but on a psychic level because they're connecting through heartbeat, they're connecting through facial recognition for energy recognition. When someone says, I can see your aura, they're looking towards what you're projecting. They're
Yes.
associating that with with a range of colors, which is another language, right? So it's like when we're speaking of magic and all that. Again, this is what we're talking about, the more subtle levels, and we're projecting it all the time. So when tapping into that psychic intuition from tapping into anything, what energy are you bringing to the table, really? What are you really bringing to the table? And the more you know about that, the more you can understand the framework of where your beliefs come in, where someone else's beliefs have impacted you, right?
Mm-hmm.
All these kinds of things. And then you can see what you're actually projecting. And from that point, it's like what I found to be most useful is when I get stuck in a projection, taking myself, and this is something I'm still practicing. So within 10 years from now, another thing I'd really like to do is be able to do this immediate instead of, after the fact. But the key is to take one of the keys is to take yourself into third person. So you're no longer identifying as yourself in that experience, but taking it to third person. So then you're no longer attached to that storyline and you can give yourself the grace to feel what you're feeling, but to also dial it down or to
Mm-hmm.
respond in a way to the situation that then brings more clarity to that whole picture. So you're not stuck in this, it has to be this way kind of attitude. Because you got to recognize that that's something that you're projecting, and other people are going to be feeding off of that. And then that is going to end up being a projection, whether it was or it wasn't.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I have a few people that I conversate with. Not many, because I can't hold on to too many friends at one given time. Too much human stuff. But I've noticed, like, developing my personal abilities. I'll have a dream about someone, and I'll see certain symbols in certain circumstances, and I'll know to like tell the individual, "Hey, I had a dream about this, and then I saw this symbol. Just last night, I was being chased by a gigantic black snake for a long time too. It was obnoxious, not like for a little bit. I mean, I'm running down the street being chased by this big ass black snake with little yellow stripes on it, and the individual in question, who will probably be in the chat and will know what I'm talking about exactly. Um, I was her roommate in the dream, and some other stuff happened. Like we had a roommate also who was this really old guy, and he died while living with us, and he left this note to her. And so I woke up. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't even try to interpret it. I just broke down everything in the dream that I perceived, and she knew immediately what it was. Like there was a particular individual in her life with this gigantic black tattoo on his back who behaved in such a way as the older guy who died in the dream that I described. And the reason I bring this up is because, like what you said about the aura and what you said about being able to be in sync with individuals, when I had that dream, it wasn't for me. Because sometimes we have dreams for us to interpret, sometimes we have dreams for other people. Because she was in this dream, I knew this dream was for her, and she was able to break down everything about what this meant. It described specifically this other individual. So that is an example of what it's like to really attune your psychic perception to another person's aura. You can start to pick up stories, you can start to pick up metaphors from another person's experience.
Oh
I know
yeah.
you got plenty of experience with that. You done visited me plenty of times.
Heck yeah. Well, you and I had some pretty bomb conversations too, and experiences in the astral. So yes, it happens. And that's the other thing about like understanding you may be picking up on something or on somebody's stuff, right? Like you may like not saying that you're gonna miss all the time with your aim here. Like if I'm angry about something, there might be some legitimacy to that, right? Or there if I'm having some type of response, there might be some legitimacy to it. But what the astral has taught me is that there's a lot to it that may not be within the context that I'm perceiving it as, or the context may match, but the symbology doesn't, right?
Mm,
Or like there may be something, it may be related to what's going on, but it may not be specific to what's going on. So I think
mm,
that's also something that we have to be sensitive to when connecting to each other and understanding kind of what we're putting out and what is being received. I may very well be receiving information, but you're not going to be receiving it in the same way I am.
right.
A similar story may play out, but also at the same time, it's going to be according to what you're experiencing and then what I'm experiencing. And that picture is going to look slightly different. It's never going to look exactly the same.
Yeah, the astral is pretty interesting. Oh, go ahead.
Oh man, I love that stuff.
I
It's a whole
almost
other
wanted to
episode.
focus on that entirely, but I wanted to kind of do it this way first. Maybe next time we'll go deep into the astral.
I would love that. Absolutely. I'm always open for those conversations, man.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of keep this within an hour, but sheesh, we started getting into the juicy stuff. Um, a question that I like to ask here is, let's say that you have been suddenly given the ability to manifest anything, and in the state that you are now, in the place that you are now, if you had this ability, what would be the first thing you do with that ability?
I would improve my abilities. I would I would improve my abilities. I would improve my mindset towards the abilities that I acquire and towards the skills that I'm going to continue learning. I would I would greatly improve my mindset so I can be receptive to what I learn and the skills and be able to apply them in a way that is most appropriate, that is also um, most useful. Most useful and appropriate, yeah, but I would definitely have improvement of my state of mind when it comes to that and of my mindset to being more receptive, as well as being able to process that information. That's definitely what I would manifest. That way I could do it again whenever I wanted and use it wisely.
And use it wisely. Okay, I can get behind that. And I do have one more question that I'd like to ask you.
Shoot.
What is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self or to someone who's just starting on this path? They have the ambition, the heart, the drive, maybe not the discipline, definitely not the knowledge, but they want to do it. What advice would you give to your younger self or to someone who's fresh on this path?
Well, so that's pretty interesting you bring that up because I actually had a pretty good moment in meditation where I spoke to my younger self. Um, Give yourself grace to make mistakes and understand that this story is to unfold for your betterment. Maintain that mindset that what you do is going to better you and always strive towards being better tomorrow. In the sense, and not in a degrading way, but in the sense that I learn from the experiences I had today. I give myself that grace for learning that. And what did I take away from this? And what can I do then that will change my outcomes so then tomorrow will be a better day? That's what I would do. That's what I would say for sure.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. Well, I think that we have come to a point in our interview where we are going to go our separate ways. Um, this has been an awesome conversation. I always love talking to you, Alora, in any scenario or situation. You're one of those people that are just like a forever friend. Like, you don't see him for like 5 years and all of a sudden you're back and it's just,
Yeah, you are
yeah.
too, Trav. I really love our friendship, and I'm very grateful to have you in my life for sure. We're going on like 3 years. I think you like it's been a while, man.
In this manifestation, at least.
That's right. At least in this manifestation, that's right. Yeah. No, I'm very grateful that you had me on here, and I'm really looking forward to our future conversations for sure.
Yeah, me too. So, for the rest of the people who enjoyed our conversation, is there, like, are you doing anything as far as social media? Is there a place where people can follow you if you're down for that? Or,
Yeah, I mean, you can, as far as social media goes, I've kind of been staying off of it, but I do always love reading messages and talking to people about this kind of stuff. I absolutely love it. So my Instagram is Alcolmea, Alcolmeia. Um, and that's pretty much what I'm communicating through, if anything. And yeah, hit me up if you have any questions or anything like that. I really don't post a lot of stuff except for like fighting stuff or if I'm tagged in something, sure. But it's not necessarily a business page. So, but if anyone has any questions or just wants someone to talk to, because I understand that this journey is a lonely one. So, if you just want someone to talk to or whatever, I absolutely love talking about this stuff and could do it forever. So yeah, people can hit me up on that. I do have a YouTube channel. It is, if you look up uh, Laura Cohen, ALORACOHEN, and you put down like meditation or Tatwa Shuddhi, you will find the Tatwa Shuddhi meditation, and that links you to my YouTube. Um, and maybe we can share a link or something like that to the channel itself. But that's just a channel where I share my thoughts. I do guided meditations for people who want that for reference or anything like that in their studies. And yeah, again, I'm always down. Like that's kind of my personal journey type YouTube channel page where I also share the resources that have helped me a lot. So if people want to get into that kind of thing, like especially with Vedic meditations and all that kind of stuff, um, yeah, you can find that's my YouTube channel. You can find me there.
Cool, cool. So, if you missed the spelling on that, we'll have the links down in the description, Instagram and YouTube. And yeah, Alora, the one of the best astral navigators that I know. You've actually helped me a lot. Hit her up if you have questions, etc., etc. And looking forward to seeing you next time.
Heck yeah. Thank you, Trav. Have a beautiful
Thank you.
night, everybody. It was great.
All right, everyone. This has been a wonderful episode of the Limitless Mind podcast. Tune in with us every Tuesday. Hit the like button below. Subscribe to the channel if you're not. Like, I don't know why you aren't already. And please leave a comment on your thoughts. Leave a question. Talk about your favorite part. Any of that stuff. And we will see you in the next live stream. Peace. Oh my God, how many times do I have to click this button?